on the other side of this, medium, long term, I'm talking, guys, by the end of this year, I expect a Bitcoin to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I do, genuinely, in my heart, the left side of my chest, because they have to print so much money. If China, if Russia, if the Middle East, if these countries aren't buying our debt, someone else has to. That's the Federal Reserve. They're print, 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 print. Powell came out at the FOMC meeting and said exactly that. He said, I'm slowing down QT. QE might be on the horizon because I got a job to do, and that is fund the U.S. government because Trump said China ain't funding it anymore.
Let's be real. The financial system is hanging by a thread. The U.S. is drowning in debt, and the usual buyers, China and Russia, are walking away. So what's the Fed's brilliant plan? Fire up the money printers, of course. Jerome Powell basically admitted it at the last FOMC meeting. Quantitative tightening, QT, is slowing down. Quantitative easing, QE, is creeping back in, and the Fed's new full-time job is printing cash to keep the lights on in Washington, although that never ends well. Jack Mallers, who's never been one to sugarcoat things, hints Bitcoin could hit hundreds of thousands by the end of the year, but don't expect that to come without some serious turbulence along the way, like we're experiencing now. The market is already in chaos, and we're going to face plenty more hurdles before we get anywhere near those price targets. When the Fed's only option is to print trillions because no one else is willing to buy US debt, your dollars start to lose all real value, essentially turning into monopoly money. Mallers puts it bluntly, if the world won't buy US debt, the Fed has no choice but to print. And print. And print some more. This isn't a distant disaster waiting to happen, it's happening right now. While the decision makers keep kicking the can down the road, the crypto market is spiraling, and Bitcoin stands as a lone lifeline amidst the mess. The real question isn't if things will crash, but when, and whether you'll be holding solid assets when it all goes down. Let's watch clips from Jack Mallers' explosive interview to gain more insight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
One of the reasons I personally believe Bitcoin will inevitably decouple from the stock market is because the stock market has been treated as this excess fiat liquidity monetized expression of currency debasement because it's where a lot of the global trade surplus has ended up. People don't want treasuries. They'd rather own Google stock. That's the truth. They would rather own forward earnings in Facebook, in Amazon, in Apple, and in Google than long duration US debt instruments. Does all of that make sense? So if Donald Trump is going to say, I want to realign the economic order globally, he's going to crash the stock market and there's going to be a lot of disturbance in the treasury market. Now, how is this all good for Bitcoin? Okay, when Jerome Powell came out in March meeting for the Fed and said, I'm slowing down QT and I'm going to soon enact QE. And when Secretary Bessent of the Treasury said, we're looking into the SLR, which would allow banks to buy unlimited amounts of treasuries, what are these guys saying? They're saying if foreigners aren't the buyers of US treasuries and aren't giving our markets in America liquidity, we have to find it somewhere else. If China, if Russia, if these countries are not buying our debt and are not investing in our economy, who will? And when Trump is saying, Jerome Powell sucks, Jerome Powell sucks, Jerome Powell sucks, because Donald Trump needs Jerome Powell to enact quantitative easing to print money. The only way to solve the deficits is to print money. This is the massive aha moment that you have to realize is, listen, what Donald Trump wants to do is fix the deficits. He doesn't like that other countries are operating in a surplus and having jobs like manufacturing jobs, lower class jobs. They have a real middle class. None of these things the United States of America has. Secretary Bessent is getting out in the media and he's saying 90% of the stock market is owned by 10% of our population. We highly bias the upper class. You either own financial assets and you benefit from the currency debasement, or you don't and you get screwed. And Trump is saying my voting bloc, half my voting bloc has never owned a stock. They want manufacturing jobs. Half of them aren't college educated. Half this country doesn't go to university. And I need to reindustrialize this country. We have to produce stuff here. We have to defend against the fact that we're reliant on the outside world to actually live our lives. That's fine. All of that's fine. If you want to do that, whatever. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. That's not what this podcast is about. What this podcast is about is, okay, if you're going to tell other countries no more surplus, take your money and go home, their money is in NVIDIA. Their money is in our debt. They're going to dump treasuries. They're going to sell our stock market. Who's going to buy it? Who's going to replace the bidder that was China, that was the Middle East, that was Russia, that was Europe? Who's going to replace that? And if you listen, it's the Federal Reserve and it's the US banking system. The amount of money that they're going to have to print in order to make up for the realignment of global trade. And when the White House comes out and starts self-admitting that the US dollar positions us unfairly to operate in a deficit and have global trade, if you want to be the world reserve currency, you have to operate in a deficit. Your job is to give the rest of the world your currency and import debt and real stuff. So if you don't like that setup, then you don't want to be the world reserve currency. It's just plain and simple. So when people say we're moving towards a neutral reserve asset, things like gold are valuable, things like Bitcoin are valuable. Why? It's obvious. Because no one wants to be the world reserve currency. No one wants to operate into deficit. No one wants to deindustrialize. No one wants to eliminate their middle class. No one wants to disadvantage the poor. Nobody wants to over-financialize. Nobody wants any of these things. That's what Donald Trump is saying. But what we're living through, listen, short-term pain, short-term volatility, we've been saying it over and over and over and over again on this podcast. If you're caught off sides today, you haven't been listening. I'm telling you, volatility in the short term, it could go up, it could go down. The point is it's not going to stay flat. It's going to bounce around. It's going to try and scare you out. It's going to try and shake you out. You got to stay solvent. You got to live your life, make more than you're spending right now. Do not use leverage. Go outside, be productive, smile, hang out with your friends, just breathe, relax for a second. We cannot affect so much change without volatility. Okay. But why is the stock market crashing? Why are you seeing such violent reaction from tariffs? Because tariffs take away the surplus other countries have. Other countries take their profit from us when they trade and they dump it into the stock market.
The stock market is on the edge, teetering on the brink of collapse. It's been propped up by cheap money, with tech stocks benefiting while U.S. debt grows weaker by the day. But this house of cards is about to come crashing down. Trump's trade war and Powell's reckless money printing are pushing the system toward total failure. As foreign money pulls out, the Fed will scramble to print more cash, sending the markets into utter chaos. Stocks will crumble, and no one will be able to save them. Meanwhile, Bitcoin stands untouched. There's no government intervention, no artificial manipulation, just hard-coded scarcity. The dollar is weakening, inflation is surging, and the old financial system is unraveling, leaving Bitcoin to rise in its place. The tech stock fantasy of 50x earnings is about to implode as Trump's policies force nations to take their capital elsewhere. The Fed's response? Print harder and faster. Bitcoin doesn't rely on faulty liquidity or overvalued assets. It thrives on scarcity. As Wall Street panics and the dollar weakens, Bitcoin's decoupling from the failing system is inevitable. Let's watch more clips from the interview.
I think that Bitcoin will decouple from the stock market because, guys, things like DeepSeek, the reason things like DeepSeek are so scary is because it causes investors to think, wait, is everything made in the US actually that much better than the rest of the world? If so, why? Also, why am I paying 30, 40, 50 times earnings for NVIDIA? If Donald Trump is basically saying, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, take your money, go home. You're not allowed to invest in the U.S. stock market. We're not going to give you a surplus in global trade and excess U.S. dollars to punt on stocks. Then why am I an investor? Why am I going to pay 40 times earnings for NVIDIA if I'm not basically buying the guarantee that everyone who's operating in a global trade surplus is going to be investing in the stocks here, right? It's like, oh, U.S. exceptionalism has just been funded by foreigners operating in a surplus. Does that make sense? So all of a sudden, if no one's going to be operating in a surplus, and there's not a bunch of excess capital that's seeking a dollar-denominated home, they do not want to invest in their local economy with local currency because it's going to strengthen the currency. So if I'm China, let me just give an example. I'm China, I'm trading with the US. I give the US a bunch of shit. iPhones and laptops and cases or whatever. Masks. I give US a bunch of stuff in trade and I get a bunch of dollars. If I exchange those dollars for local currency, I'm strengthening the currency, which weakens my export economy. I have to have a weak Chinese currency if I want to be the industrial power of the world. So what do I do with all these dollars? What foreign countries do with all the dollars is they buy our treasuries, they buy our stock market. They buy US stocks, they buy US debt. They need dollar-denominated investments for these dollars. And so if the new policy is take your money, go home, get out of here, and by the way, when we trade, you're not going to get a surplus of dollars to invest. Well, what's that going to do to stocks? Go down. These countries are going to have to sell their stocks, sell their US debt, and they're not going to have a surplus to invest. So all of a sudden, I do not expect US stocks to be trading at 30, 40, 50 times earnings. Why would they? For those of you that believed it's because NVIDIA is that impressive of a company, they're not. It's because there's been that much fiat liquidity sloshing around. So I expect stocks to be repriced. If stocks don't have an infinite bid from foreign nation states, what multiple on earnings should you pay? It's a question for the free market, but not 50. I'll tell you that much. And this is why Bitcoin will decouple, because Bitcoin isn't priced on earnings. And if countries are looking for something to own, you're going to want scarce reserve assets. Long gold, long Bitcoin. Easy. So people don't understand what we're living through. And I'm looking on the internet and everyone's freaking out. And my message to my audience and to the Bitcoiners is just relax. You got to breathe. Calm down. Understand what you own. Understand what we're living through right now. Let the stock market puke and figure itself out. And by the way, is it over? No. What are we living through right now? I'm literally on Wall Street having meetings with Wall Street people. This city is full of a bunch of over-levered, pompous hedge fund assholes. These guys, the stock market's down like 4%. These guys are begging and pleading and screaming for a bailout. Give me a break. Everyone wants a relief rally. We're now at the phase where everyone's like, oh, you hear that? Oh my God, Trump said that he's open to negotiations. Trump said he might walk back what he said. And no one's actually pricing in the fact that Trump means business. Whether you like it or not, Trump wants to help the poor American. Trump wants to create factory jobs. Trump wants to produce stuff here. Trump wants to fix the deficit problem. That's until I see otherwise, Trump is about business. Trump is keeping his promises. Whether you like it or not, this is not a political podcast. I'm just calling it how I see it. And you've got a bunch of over-levered people here in New York that are just losing their mind. It is what it is. And this is so bullish for Bitcoin. They're going to have to print so much money. Bitcoin is really priced with how much fiat currency is sloshing around in the world. And in order for all of this to play out and work, we have to debase our currency. We have to devalue our debt, and we have to create more fiat. It's going to send Bitcoin nuclear. And this thing will not trade like a beta NASDAQ stock. It won't. Now, I'm not saying it's decoupling today. I'm not saying it's going to decouple tomorrow. All the people on Twitter like taking 15-minute candles and claiming Bitcoin's decoupling, it's just not how it's going to work. Right now, people are begging and pleading for a relief rally. They're like, oh my God, did you hear Trump just got on the phone to negotiate? Like, please, President Trump, bail us out, reverse all your policies. And then I don't think we felt enough pain. We haven't felt enough pain. These people need to learn. And Trump's been very open about it. He's like, I'm not looking at the stock market. Sometimes you need to take your medicine. That's what he said. If you are an over-levered, pompous hedge fund, bro, sometimes you need to take your medicine.
The cryptocurrency world cheered when Trump reclaimed the White House, hailing him as the first Bitcoin president. Yet since his sweeping tariff announcement last week, Bitcoin has plunged 10%, mirroring stock market declines and proving crypto still moves with risk assets. This volatility contradicts Trump's pro-crypto agenda, appointing friendly regulators, building a national Bitcoin reserve, and even launching his own meme coin. As Jack Mallers predicted, Bitcoin's true decoupling moment hasn't arrived. While Trump's policies may ultimately weaken the dollar, a long-term bullish case for Bitcoin, short-term market panic is overriding fundamentals. Investors still treat crypto like tech stocks, dumping it at the first sign of economic uncertainty. The irony is, Trump's tariffs could accelerate the very conditions Mallers described, a dollar crisis forcing the Fed to print wildly. But for now, markets aren't patient enough to wait. As one crypto investor noted, optimism is crumbling under Trump's silence. The big lesson here is, even a crypto president can't override market psychology yet. As we wrap up, are you betting on decoupling or bracing for more pain? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.